We're good to get. We're going to go ahead and record this meeting so that folks can come back to it later and watch it through the app and just enjoy who couldn't be here today. My name is Lauren Siegel. I want to first, on behalf of the Tulane Alumni Association, welcome all of you to our panel, The Great Resignation, How to Attract and Retain Talent. Again, my name is Lauren Siegel, and I'm the managing director of Trepwise. We are a boutique management consultant firm here in New Orleans. We work with purpose-driven organizations. So that means nonprofits, public sector entities, and for-profits that happen to be specifically focused on creating some sort of impact in the world and in the market in which they operate. And the services we provide include solving problems, any kind of problem from, my employees don't want to stay with me, I can't retain talent, to I'm not sure how to grow my business with all this new funding I have. We also do a lot of work in organizational culture. So today's topic is particularly near and dear to my heart. And we do some long-term strategic planning as well. So I want to provide just a little bit of context on the topic and really get into why we're here before we introduce our fantastic panelists today. Throughout the past 3 years, change seems to be the only thing that we can rely on in the workplace. The way we work has changed forever, in some cases for the better, and it feels as though we haven't even scratched the surface with how the future of work is going to look coming through the pandemic and multiple different things that we're seeing and experiencing. This significant shift in the way we work has led to a very real change in attitudes around how, where, and when people want to show up for work. So this also means that, of course, our strategies for cultivating talent, for keeping our talent, for providing opportunities for folks that are already inside of our company has to change as well. I want to talk a little bit about kind of the facts and figures about the Great Resignation and why it's so important to us today and in many kind of news outlets and discussions that you may have seen. Literally millions of people are quitting their jobs throughout pandemic. In January, we reached the 8th month in a row of record resignations. And actually November 2021 was the highest month of resignations with a reported 4.53 million resignations in November. That's just the reported resignations. This means that companies have to be agile, right? From offboarding to recruiting, hiring, and onboarding and training new talent. And that work takes hours. We're all of us here are here because we know how hard it is and how challenging it is and how many opportunities there are to make that better. Not to mention the burden of workload it also puts on folks in our companies who are staying with all of the change and turnover. So sourcing and keeping great employees is obviously more important than ever. And fortunately for us, we have some folks who I would like to consider experts just based on their experiences and what they do. And they're going to help us understand what to do in our companies to work towards a solution to the Great Resignation. So I have with me Alice Kuo, who is the head of growth of Worka. And I have Haley Miller, who is the owner operator of McDonald's. So I'd love to start with Alice. Could you please just take a few minutes to introduce yourself and just let the audience know, why you're here and what your role is?
Yeah, sure. Hi, thank you for inviting me here. My name is Alice. I graduated 2015 with MPH degree. Now I'm working at the HR startup called Worka, W-O-R-C-K. Yeah, it's right over here. We focus on building cross-border teams in APAC countries and provide recruitment and international payroll, such as like EOR services. So yeah, happy to be here to share more about remote work.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Alice. We are grateful. And Alice just stepped off a plane yesterday from Taiwan, I believe. So woo, you are a stronger person than me for dealing with that jet lag. That is real. Haley, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I've been on a lot of the calls earlier today, and I don't know if I would call myself an expert. I've just been learning so much. So thank you for having me. My name's Haley Miller. I graduated from Tulane in 2016 with a degree in psychology. I then went to the University of Louisiana at Lafayette and received my master's in business administration in 2018. I'm currently located in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I'm a third generation McDonald's owner operator. So my paternal grandparents opened their first restaurant in 1982. And currently it's my parents, my brother, and we all work together and own 10 restaurants in the Acadiana area, like in South Louisiana. I'm also a member of the Women's Operator Network, which is dedicated to the expansion of entrepreneurial opportunities for women throughout the McDonald's franchise system. And I recently joined the board of directors for the Ronald McDonald House Charities in South Louisiana. So I've been getting really involved in that. And that's about it for me.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being here. Haley and I had a great chat about family business and how that adds a whole nother dynamic to attracting and retaining non-family folks to work in your organization. So really two unique and interesting and great perspectives for us to have today. I'd love to start my questions with Haley. And, feel free to jump in, Alice, if you've got thoughts too, but I'd like to start with kind of what causes of the Great Resignation have you seen firsthand in your company or in others that you work with?
I would say to start, it all started with COVID. So for me in particular, in our organization, we, work in a quick service restaurant. So it's close quarters. You're working with 10 to 20 people at one time in a really small space. Some people, felt uncomfortable or they didn't feel safe, or, they were still really unsure about what is COVID and what's happening. And, a lot of people felt more vulnerable were more vulnerable because they have, weakened immune systems, or they're taking care of elderly parents that live with them and they didn't want to, bring something home to them. So there was just like a lot of different things I think caused it. And overall, people have just reached this like COVID exhaustion, and it's physical and emotional, either because they had COVID and they were out and then, out of work, and that puts financial, struggles on you and your family, or, it's just emotional because you're either losing loved ones or taking care of them. And then, that takes a toll on, like you said, the people who, are working with you or maybe haven't left. They feel a little more overworked and they have to pick up the pace and kind of pick up the workload for other people. And I think whenever your company starts to feel shorthanded, certain things kind of fall by the wayside, whether that's, training, or people start to feel overlooked or feel stagnant in their, career. It's just so many different things I think have accumulated and caused it.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that uncertainty. And I think what's fascinating about the difference here is that, Haley, you're really looking at a hyper local level, right? You're hiring from your immediate community around the different McDonald's that you own and operate. I'd love to kind of have Alice chime in and tell us more about what you're seeing on a global scale with companies that Worka works with.
Yeah, so for our side, my clients are mostly US based. I'm based in New York as well. And so the company facing in the US right now, it's really hard to hire people, especially the software engineering side. It's more like a tech war, kind of like Forbes described last year. They published several articles talk about the talent war, about the software engineers. It's hard to find it, like Facebook, Amazon, those type of things. And so they're looking for other solutions, such as cross-border teams. So like Latin American countries, even like they were considered Ukraine before, and now the war right now. So they're thinking about APAC countries. So that's kind of an opportunity for us. And for this, it's more about benefits, like how can we compete the benefits domestically in the US and internationally. Of course, you think that international will be more easier, like the cost of living and other things, but now people all living, the remote world, so we all remote working. So the benefits is more important right now when you're like doing the remote working environment.
Yeah, and that's something I want to touch on, but let's maybe discuss benefits in the context of company culture. Alice, I'd love to hear from you kind of what you consider as a healthy culture, as cultures that are attracting talent right now. What do they look like?
So for our companies and most of our clients, they offer more like flexible hours. So even though you're working for a US company, but your hour is based in the Asia time zone. So you don't have to wake up in the midnight to finish up things, but it really takes on like company culture on how you cooperate with other people. When someone is sleeping on the other side of the time zone and you're cooperating with the same project. So there are a lot of productivity like software that you can use to streamline that process and building out SOP, those type of things. And the career growth that really attract the talents that like, okay, now we're all working from home and how I can, improve myself, career growth, and meet other people virtually. And so that really attract like people to come over there as well. Yeah.
That's great. And I think, on the kind of pulling the string of benefits a little bit more, some companies see fully remote work or flexible times for work as something that's just a given, right? They've always done it that way, or it's just part of their operating model. But many companies are starting to see that as a benefit. What are some other benefits that you think are really helping to attract talent, and help companies stay competitive?
So the benefits, yeah, now it's like very basic, like, the health benefit, the retirement benefits, it's very basic right now. It's more about how I mean, some companies, and recently I heard in Taiwan actually, because usually sign-on bonus is happening in the US, but now they're offering in Asia as well. Like, okay, I want this talent so badly, so they offer sign-on bonus. It's not exactly like benefits, but it's more like how just want to attract you wanted to get this talent as soon as possible because the global expansion. So this is one of them. And then also provide like some very basic like laptop and other equipment and some allowance like monthly allowance, that type of things to attract people to come to work for them. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear that because those benefits seem relatively traditional and somewhat basic, right? I think I was reading an article that we're coming out of the phase of like pool table or ping pong tables in the office as like a fun benefit, and moving more into those fulfilling those basic needs for employees. Haley, how would you describe the company culture in kind of your McDonald's entities?
I would say for our organization, and it's always, we've kind of focused on this, but especially throughout this COVID pandemic, but just being collaborative and communicative, that I found that, we talk about things being very uncertain and we're kind of learning as we go. And I feel like your, leadership and your teams have to be comfortable with that as well and with the direction the team is going. So I feel like making sure that communication, and I think it seems like it's something that's just like a give, like, oh, you have to communicate, but like really thinking about your internal communication and is it working? That's something that we try to do, especially like having transparency and trust. And, nowadays, if you don't have that within your teams, there's so much competition these days because you have so many people choosing to leave their jobs and choosing different career paths. I feel like it kind of puts, companies and employers on notice, saying, hey, there's a lot of other opportunities for people. So if you're not giving them what they need and what they want, there are other things that they can go and try. So I think, being genuine with your team members and asking them what they need. And then also like what we found just having to do with communication is just we've increased the amount of times that we kind of all get together as a group. So with our owner operators, our DO, which are director of operations, our supervisor and our managers, we get together. I mean, we see each other almost every day, just within different stores, but we get together all at once. And that's been really helpful, like multiple times a month, just to really, we have such a wide range. And I know we're going to talk about this later, just about diversity within the workplace. But we have so many, diverse people and backgrounds and ages, races, all of that. But you really have to tap into it and ask people, hey, how is it going? what's going on in your restaurant, what's working, what's not, and then be able to change. I think that's the biggest thing, is just communicating, but then adapting as you go.
What are some of those changes that you've made kind of since this resignation phenomenon began?
I mean, I would say if we start with just recruiting, I would say we kind of totally revamped our hiring process, and we incorporated a lot more digital things. So we started doing virtual interviews when necessary. That's still a big kind of learning opportunity for us and for potential, new hires, because a lot of them don't know, it's these new websites you're using and these new apps, and not everyone is comfortable with them. So it's still a work in progress, but that's been a big thing, is in incorporating those virtual interviews. I think Alice, you mentioned it, but like more flexible schedules for people, because now they're having to deal with so many other things outside of work, whether it be, taking care of loved ones, or maybe their kids are, doing virtual school, so they need to help them with that. I've also learned that like we have to be quick. And I don't know how this is for other industries, but I know for us, people will apply to multiple places in one day or in 1 hour. And if you don't get to them quickly and your onboarding procedures are not efficient, you'll do the interview, they'll agree, and then within the week I found something else. So I think really starting strong in that interview and like explaining what the benefits are, because for us, McDonald's has a lot of benefits, especially for, I think we know that, hey, a big majority of our crew are going to be under the age of 20. A lot of them are still in high school. So I think making sure that, if we know who our potential team members are, and then making sure that our benefits fit them. So like we have, it's called Archways to Opportunity, and it offers tuition assistance to employees. They only have to be working in minimum like 15 hours a week. So it can be, they're going to college and then working part-time, and they can get tuition assistance. With that, we have a high school diploma program, so people can get, their high school diploma for free. It's all online. So there's different things like that. Like we just have to be very aggressive about, explaining those things to people, because they don't always know, and perception is reality. So we could be doing a lot of things in our restaurants and in our organization that are really great, but if we don't communicate that to people, it doesn't help us as much.
Yeah, and I think the fact that you all employ so many young people is something that's, somewhat unique to your industry and a few others. But I remember one of the things that we talked about was like financial coaching. So you have like a retirement program, and you have people that are, experts coming in and teaching these young folks about financial literacy, about saving, about setting goals for their finances, and kind of building their wealth over time, which is pretty incredible. We have that as well, and we found it very, very successful with our younger team. Alice, is there anything that, you all changed or that you saw change in the companies that you worked with as a response?
Yeah, I wanted to add on the flexible hour, that I feel like now it's not 9 to 5 anymore. It's not like by hourly, like 40 hours per week. It's more responsible. Like it's more result driven. That once you completely something, that it's more result driven. The boss didn't really care about when did you finish, how long did you finish, as long as you finish it, done your work. Yeah, and now I want to touch on that. The onboarding thing is really critical for us as well. We're in the HR, so a lot of time it's like you finally recruit someone, the candidate say yes, and you just kind of delay on the offer letter, then the candidate, it's gone for good. And then because it's so competitive, and so that's how our company, we wanted to do more like transparency on the onboarding, like more, it's like you recruit this person 100%, we're close to 100% to the onboarding process, and that's how we get to like 10 people, 10 software engineers within 10 months. So within 1 month. So 10 people per month, that's our goal. And then we wanted to, to speed up on that. And kind of like, this is kind of like reality right now, because we are also competing with other corporates, like bigger corporates like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, those kind of companies, they can give a lot of money and incentives, like Haley mentioned, some like benefits and mentors and other things. But for small business like startups, it is really hard for them. So they have to think about other benefits and other way to attract talents as well. Yeah.
10 people per month sounds like torture to me.
I mean,
and you know, the retention starts all the way from recruitment and even reputation, one could say, right?
Retention rate is really important too. We've been running for almost 4 years and we have like 96 retention rate. I mean, I did not realize how high it was before because I was in more like, startup communities, and then I transitioned to HR recently. So I did not realize until I talked to people, it's like 96. I was like, oh, is it a lot? It's not 100. So, and now I realize how hard it is. Like once you get on board, you have to make sure this talent is gonna stay because there's so many attractive things, like so many attractive companies, out there. And sometimes, small business is small business. Sometimes they want a name brand, like, other, tech companies. So, so it is really hard to keep them, continue working for small business startups. Yeah.
Yeah. And 96% retention is incredible. I mean, that's a superhero number to reach for.
We're trying to maintain that.
Yeah. We've talked a little bit, we've talked a good bit about benefits. What else do you think it is that's keeping people in your company when they do have opportunities to go somewhere like an Amazon where it feels like, oh, there's endless growth potential there? What do you think keeps people in your company?
So for startup, it's more flat system, so less hierarchy, and then everyone get their voices. So it's like if you have any suggestion of things, you're able to speak up. And if you wanted to build something, it's possible to build, propose, and then you build it. So for me, that we are still the core team is within 10 people, and we have other 10 people as a recruitment team in Asia. So in the core team in the US, I'm kind of like the very like founding members for Worka, and I'm able to say, hey, I wanted to set up, this SOP process for onboarding, or for how do I reach to my clients and building my relationships with the clients and stuff, how I'm going to approach. Usually the founders are very flexible on how like to do it your way, and then we discuss and how we can improve. So there's just a lot of voices that you can raise, and then you can discuss. You feel like you're growing together with the company, and you're learning each other from the founders, so you're closer to the founders as well. It's not like, oh, the founders over there and you have your supervisor, and it's really hard to get to talk to the founder to understand more about their vision and mission. So it's a different vibes for me, and that's kind of like I like startups, right? Working with startups right now. Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that, Haley, around what besides the benefits is attracting and keeping people?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that I know for us, a lot of people that come and work for us, like this is their first job. And a lot of times, it's not something that they're looking to do long term. They're in high school and they're looking to make some money on the side. And if they can, go to school and then keep working and maybe get some money to do that as well. But sometimes it's not their goal to work their way up in the management and maybe become a restaurant manager, supervisor. But I think one thing that helps is, people come in and they see the just level or the range of years that we have people working for us. We have people who maybe stay a couple of weeks, and then we have people that have been with us for 30 years. And I think we really have, I think the size of our organization at the moment, it's just such a nice size to where, it's big enough that we can work with each other really well and lend a hand when we need to from one restaurant to another. And one example I like to use is, we just have like a really good sense of a team and just working together, and that always helps people to go further. And one example is like during hurricanes, a lot of times we're the first ones to reopen after a hurricane, and it can be a struggle depending on, we never tell people, oh, you have to come in. We have group messages and we have this stuff saying, okay, we'll be open at this time, anybody want to come? And a lot of times, there's people saying, hey, I'm flooded and I can't come, but people from different restaurants and managers from other restaurants are like, ooh, I'll go. So it's like, it's times like that where everyone pitches in for each other and really helps. And so you kind of see everyone come together as an organization versus like separate teams. And I just feel like you feel that like within the restaurants and within our organization. And we really try to, especially right now with how stressful things can be, just focusing on encouragement. And that's like internal. We have our own kind of app that we use to kind of like Facebook, but just for us, of internal communication. And we post like, here's the employee of the month. Here's, who had the fastest drive through, just little things like that. And I think the restaurants that, are the most successful are the ones where their teams work together the best. There's like one store that we have that they're really big into throwing little parties for each other. So anytime it's a person's birthday or, one of our managers just graduated from Hamburger University, which is they have to go to Chicago, they have to do all these classes and, get certified to be a restaurant manager. And they threw her a whole party with a cake and, and it was just this little thing that they did that really instills that sense of, family and teamwork that I find, just really, really helps.
Yeah, that resonates so much because, employees, of course, are hired by you and your family and working for McDonald's. But what you've been able to do by, building a place that values authenticity, clarity, connection, collaboration is actually make it so your employees are working for each other. Right? They show up for each other every day. They don't, no offense, Haley, but they don't necessarily show up for you every day, right? They show up for each other because of the bonds that we're having. And creating that sense of community around the workplace is something that, we work with our clients a lot, whether they're small teams or whether they're 500, 700, 2,000 person teams. It's really important to have that sense of community. I want to shift gears a little bit because it's clear that you all are here because you've been successful in this. Is there anything that you've tried recently or, as a result of your agility that didn't work?
I would say, like I talked about virtual interviews earlier, that sometimes it's a hit and sometimes it's a miss. That, it can work and you just kind of have to know, when it's needed or not, but there's definitely a learning curve with that.
For us, that didn't work is more on the cross-boarding team, that English ability is very important. So it's kind of like Haley was saying, communication, that if your English is okay and then you cannot really communicate, then it's really hard to work together with other teams. Sometimes the teams is not even in the US, in somewhere else. But the common language is on English, even though it's like sometimes verbally, sometimes writing, it is very important, especially email communication is very important as well. Yeah.
Great. So let's kind of pull on that thread a little bit more around kind of diversity of language. And I want to move to some questions around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in general. What companies have you seen that build really solid strategies around diversity, equity, and inclusion that are good at attracting and maintaining a diverse workplace? And either one of y'all can jump in.
I saw on Amazon, they're doing pretty good on this part. I'm also a military spouse, and then they even have like a military spouse program to recruit like just different like diversity of people. And if you through that program, they were put into like kind of like diversity program, you're able to get your resume bump up for them to do the recruitment. And for other like clients that we have, that we are trying to get more like, the gender balance as well. But it is really hard because the industry, the tech industry, more male than female. It's not that we don't want to hire female. It just is really hard. But our founders, we continue to try to balance that when we do our resume, when we do the screening. We want to make sure we balance those resumes and make sure our clients, they kind of balance those kind of diversity and equity thing. And for our company, although our founders are males, but most of our teammates, we are kind of very well balanced 50-50. Yeah.
When you say, I'm not super familiar with military and military spouse kind of recruiting methods. Can you tell us a little bit more about that for folks who may not know so much?
Oh yeah, so it was last year. I found out there's an Amazon military spouse program. So that's for the spouse, but they also have like the military and veteran program as well. And for the spouse program, they are specifically looking for certain talented people, not just the software engineers, but also for people that need to work remotely. Because a lot of times our husbands or wives that they are moving from station to stations. So it's really hard for us to stay in one location and not like moving around. And so that's like Amazon that created that program that are able to work remotely. But that's even before pandemic, they already started this program.
Great. So just underlining kind of the flexibility that people need to be able to work from different places. Military spouses, of course, being at the mercy of where their spouse has to go next, but being able to hold a steady job without, uprooting their entire lives when they go somewhere else. Great. Okay. Haley, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think I need to pay more attention to, I guess, what some other companies are doing, because I feel like we could learn a lot from it. I know, McDonald's in particular, they've especially lately have been talking about just increasing when it comes to franchisees, increasing the number of minorities and the number of women. And so, I feel like the first step to solving anything is just recognizing that, hey, we have an opportunity here. So I think it's good that they are talking about it and giving transparent goals of, hey, by this year, this is what we're looking to do. Increasing the number of, minority franchisees, the amount of women franchisees. And I think that's really great, because I think we've learned within our organization and as a whole, that if you have a room full of people who are just saying the same thing, you're not going to get very far. You need to have, those debates, and you need to have people who have different backgrounds, and I think that you'll go a lot further. McDonald's does have a lot of good groups. Like I'm in WAN, which is the Women's Operator Network, and that just gives us a chance to get together, share best bets, just advocate for ourselves. And McDonald's also has an initiative called Black and Positively Golden, which is a scholarship program that awards $500,000 in scholarships to students attending historically Black colleges and universities. So I feel like that's really great that they do that. And every year they go to New Orleans for Essence Festival. And they're always promoting, hey, visit, this local McDonald's here, the owner operators, they let them speak, and just really getting out there in the community and telling people, what they do. Another thing that they offer too is English Under the Arches. So that's where it helps. It's like an online set of courses, and it helps employees who English is their second language or it's not their native language. And I know we've had a couple people that, have used that, and it's been really helpful. And I know, especially in other areas where you have a lot more employees who, speak other languages, that can be really helpful when it comes to them feeling like they belong to that team. Because like Alice was saying, like communication is such a huge part of, team building. And if you have, that disconnect and people aren't able to communicate, you can become stagnant. So I feel like that is something really helpful if people are taking advantage of that.
Absolutely. And I think, it's one thing to be able to recruit a diverse talent pool from a variety of sources. And that is challenging, and fortunately there are kind of platforms out there like Jockwell and others that are specifically geared towards kind of bringing in that pool of talent. But to your point, Haley, once you have a diverse pool of talent, how do you keep them, and how do you make them feel valued and included just as much as everyone else in the company? And from a small business perspective, we're 15 people, so we are very small. From a small business perspective, what gets measured gets managed. And so in our quarterly and annual objectives as a company, we always have something about diversity, equity, and inclusion, whether it's an internal training or how we're spending our money on big contracts like rebranding or website development for ourselves or things like that. Or referrals, right? We always have goals around that. And what that does is it allows us to kind of put a stake in the ground as a company that everyone else can align around and have real, good, honest, transparent conversations around what's propelling us towards those goals and what are the barriers that are standing in our way. And really tapping into the perspectives of our team, who are all very different from each other, which kind of brings me to my next topic or question. We have all at some point, present company included, I will speak from my own perspective. I have definitely chalked up someone's propensity to stay at a company, right? So the fact that they want to stay there for a long time, build their career with one company over the course of years or decades. I chalk that up to people's age, right? I say, oh, older generations, they want to work one place and work forever. Those are assumptions and biases that I hold. I know we've talked about this a little bit, Haley, and I'd love to kind of bring it to the forefront, thinking through the difference in behavior, in outlook between folks who work or folks who are working from different generations in your company. How do you balance different expectations of those different individuals?
I would say whenever we're in the onboarding process, it's good to communicate with that person on what their expectations are and what their goals are, because they'll tell you like, hey, I'm just looking for something for the summer, and I'm looking for something that's long term, and I want to get into management. Like, people are usually pretty honest, and they'll tell you what their goals are. So I think just knowing that from the get-go, and that kind of helps you to help them with whatever throughout their journey with you, however long or short it is. I think just knowing what it is that they want, and I think you have different people. Let's say they're in high school, they may say, hey, I want to work part-time because I want to be I'm in school, but I want to be working as well, and maybe I can get this tuition assistance, or so I think there's other things that you can bring into that once you know kind of where they're at and what their goals are. And I would say too, like, you just need to know, obviously you want to treat people fairly, but you do also want to know that different people, sometimes because of their ages, just have different priorities, and you want to be able to adjust to that and make sure that everyone is a little different, and some people need more support or in different areas. So I think understanding if someone is having to help their child at home with school, and that means they need a more flexible schedule, or work part-time or whatever it is. Or so I think just, I know for me, we have such a wide range of ages. We have managers that are as young as 17 and still in high school, and as old as 65. And so I think that's, for me, kind of done away with a lot of myths that maybe I had about different ages or biases about them, because I've just seen such a widespread of kind of different people's ages and maybe how hard they work or how long they stay, or I've just seen such a wide variety that I try not to have like a bias when it comes to that, because I've just seen so many different things over my short period of time in this career. But one thing I do find is interesting is just creating that good work environment among teams that have such a wide range of ages. And I know what we try to do is, before we even start talking about how to maybe run a good shift, or how to anything having to do with maybe sales or guest counts, anything like that, we're talking about just like behaviors of a leader. Mm-hmm. Because you can teach someone how to move a drive-through, or how to make certain burgers, but it's harder to teach them how to work well with a team. And then when you throw in kind of having all those diverse backgrounds and the ages, and you have a lot of different people with a lot of different opinions, And I think one thing we try to do is to like harness that for our gain,
Mhm.
is show them how important it is to have all these people with their different opinions and make sure that they're utilizing it. Don't just have them, make sure you're talking to them, because especially now we're seeing such a focus on, let's say, digital, for example, and people are doing delivery more and they're using apps more. And a lot of times it's the millennials and the Gen Zs that understand that more and they have more experience with it. So we're leaning to them to explain to us, hey, what's working with this, what's not. Are we explaining it well to customers? How can we do better? And I think just finding everyone's strengths and then harnessing that has really helped us and kind of open people's eyes to look beyond maybe someone's age and see what they really have to bring to the table.
That's incredible. I mean, really incredible. You have such a diverse group of folks working in your organization. I'm curious to hear about what that looks like tangibly. So how are you bringing voices to the table? How are you taking feedback? How are you implementing it? Is it, in all staff meetings? Is it one-on-ones? Is it an annual how is that coming to life?
I would say it's all of the above. So I think that our structure within our organization is pretty strong in that, you have each restaurant has a restaurant manager, and then you have, multiple supervisors that each have a couple restaurants. So it's very clear kind of what the path is to, if I have an issue or maybe I have an idea, who to go to. But then also we just have this sense of kind of everyone for the team. So no matter if it's a crew person or the owner operator, like we're all in the stores. And a lot of that is because the size of our organization and the proximity of our restaurants, it just allows us, like I'm grateful for that it allows us to be on the floor with our, employees, working with them. And I think, not just talking about things, but like actively showing them and then seeing us side by side with them in the restaurants, especially through these last 2 years.
Right.
They'll
So like that side by side, in real time feedback, coaching, really just being there with and for each other.
Right. And each restaurant has like manager huddles each week. We have kind of whole leadership huddles like every Monday. We'll have entire leadership team meetings every month. And just making sure that like the things we're saying, we're actually putting into action. So like if I'm in stores, like the biggest thing I tell people is, you can say a lot of things, but if you're in a store and you're noticing something that's not right, or that someone seems upset or someone, you have to address it. A lot of times people, they don't want the conflict. And I understand that because I don't love conflict. But I've found conflict resolution is sometimes, one of the most important things we can teach to our managers, because a lot of times they just want to ignore it and say, oh, this is stressful, I don't want to deal with it. And that can really break your team down. So I feel like that's been a big thing too, is being on the floor, working side by side with your team. And then if there's things going on, you need to address it and talk to them. And we've had, one-on-ones with, maybe there's an issue between a manager and a crew person. You'll have kind of the manager come talk to the restaurant manager saying, this is the problem. Then you'll have a crew person come. And what we do is we just take them. It seems simple, but it's just something. Sometimes we just talk to each person and say, okay, go get along. What we've done is just brought them both together and have them talk it out, because if it's important enough to come and tell, me, then it's important enough, like we need to talk about it. And I feel like that really can solve a lot of issues versus just kind of sweeping them under the rug.
Yeah. And there's so much in there. I want to unpack a little bit of it, but, there's structure, right? We have to have a structure. It doesn't necessarily have to be hierarchical, but we have to have a structure of clear roles and responsibilities. We have to have a mechanism for feedback. So mechanism meaning, who do I go to give feedback, and do I feel heard when I get that, right? And we could do a whole nother panel on how to make employees feel heard. But some really great stuff there. Alice, I saw you taking notes, so I'm sure you have a few things to add.
Oh, yeah. So I like the part that the conflict one is for virtual right now. I feel it's kind of the benefit because you're not in person, like having a conflict. It's more like you have your own time. Okay, let me step out and then think about it before I jump to the next meeting. Or the next day I see this person virtually, I'll have probably like change my attitude and stuff, because I have another time to just think about it and then to think about more strategy. So it won't be more like, say something that you regret, because you have a time to think about it. So I think it's kind of a benefit, but also on the other side, that sometimes that you misread the email communication, that you thought that, oh, this person meant something, but it does not, it's a whole another, learning curve and stuff. So I feel it's kind of like interesting, but also apply to kind of touch base on the weekly meeting and one-on-one and other things. It's also the same with the virtual as well. And then it's more important that to have that, because otherwise you're just working by yourself. Sometimes some employee were lost, that like, okay, so what's my next goal or next direction? Am I on the right track? So it's really, really important to have one-on-one with your supervisor and weekly meeting with the team. And sometimes they will do a stand-up meeting, which means it's like 15 minutes per day. It sounds a lot, but it's only 10 or 15 minutes per day. So it's like, talk about like what you're gonna do, so your supervisor know that, okay, everyone's in the good hand, they know their direction, right? Let's go, just to do your work, something like that. So yeah, I think that reachable, that supervisor being reachable and also the staff being reachable is important as well. Yeah.
And, setting a communication structure is probably the number one thing that I do most often with my clients. And you may be shocked what types of companies do not have a routine meeting schedule or check-in schedule, and I'm talking companies with 400, 500 employees, just don't have any structure. It's just, well, we talk when we need to. and that might sound good, but the issue is that your employees don't know when to expect to be able to communicate with you. And then kind of our natural demons come out, right? So some of us are averse to having conversations. Like Haley was saying, some people are conflict averse. Yes, absolutely. Some people are the opposite, right? And so you have people who are conflict averse, kind of, going into their shell and not communicating. You have people who love to get a rise out of someone writing these like, stabbing emails, and it just creates this crazy dysfunction that we could have avoided if we just were like, all right, here's how we communicated when. So I've definitely seen that firsthand a lot. So we've talked a lot about kind of structures, systems, benefits, all these things to retain employees once they're in our company and make them feel included, valued, and have a sense of belonging. How do we take that and show it to people that we're recruiting for or trying to attract to our company? I think words are cheap these days. Everyone says they have a great culture. So how do we demonstrate that throughout the recruiting and hiring process? This is kind of a curveball question. So
I know, for us, we're, more local, like you mentioned. So I think knowing where your potential employees are and then meeting them there. So for us, we do a lot of communication like on Facebook and social media. And, we make sure that it's not just, hey, we're hiring for this position, but we show what current employees are doing. And especially, all the positive things that are happening, we try to show that as well. So, hey, if you join our team, this is kind of what it would look like. We have good relationships with like the Chamber of Commerce in the different towns. So if they have job fairs, we do that. Any times there, we have good relationships with schools and colleges, and, knowing that a lot of our workforce is younger. So just going straight, to them and just having a good relationship with those schools or whatever, those places in the community. But yeah, I would say, and just being as communicative you can as possible. But then also, for us, a lot of it is like referrals. So like if you're saying one thing in public, hey, we're doing this, it's going to, your current employees are going to tell other people that are applying, no, don't apply over there. This is how it is. So you can't say one thing in public and it be, and you're not going to make everyone happy. Sometimes there's going to be issues. I think for the most part, making sure that the people that you have, they're a lot of times your biggest kind of marketing tools is, if they're happy with you, they're going to go and tell their friends that, hey, I work over here. I really like it. I know you work here, but you might like it better. Or, they're going to refer to their friends. And I know a lot of organizations have kind of harnessed that and said, hey, they give like a referral bonus. So if you refer a friend and they stay for however many months or, whatever time period it is, you'll get this much of a bonus, or, maybe they do too. So just kind of being creative with that.
Mhm, mhm. So for the startup side and small business side, that is really important to do the company branding in HR, not the PR marketing branding. It's more about the HR branding. When kind of like Haley said, when you come into the company, what that looks like, what the environment looks like. You may see some of the tech companies that post about, founder posts about, oh, how satisfied their employee are, some, reports and what the working environment looks like, what will you get for the benefits and stuff. And you're able to attend, certain conferences that like, name brand and stuff to attract people. And especially for the startups, they're smaller. So, and then I understand a lot of founders wanted to keep it low key, but we still encourage them to have their own website. At least you show something. So the staff, so the candidates were, were like, okay, what they're applying to, and then they can see the status about, funding, your investor capital backed up, and then you're, in certain name brands, you partner with A, B, and C. And then, so they have more full picture about who the startup is and how long the startup will last. So that's how, we can, attract the talents. And as a recruitment agency, that we will also help them to do that packaging, like how we can, do more like HR branding for the company, and how we can persuade the candidates to apply. Because sometimes they feel like, man, I'm not sure I want to apply, but obviously they're, qualified, but it's just not, it's kind of like matchmaker. But they was like, I don't want to apply because I don't know this company, or I know too little about this company. So how are we gonna persuade them to apply? And another thing is the talent pool is really important. A lot of our candidates is by referral, because once we attract one candidate into a good company, they will bring more people coming in. And also a lot of time we use LinkedIn. LinkedIn profile is important that you put some keywords and stuff and your past experience. That's how we can find the talent people. And then we know that, credibility, reputation, through their LinkedIn connections, what their interaction is, their activity on LinkedIn and stuff. So that's how we find the talents as well. Yeah.
Great. That's super tangible, right? Go on LinkedIn and optimize your profile and make sure you're connected to the right people and all of that good stuff. Yeah, it's LinkedIn has become increasingly more relevant in my career span. So I'm glad to see that it's working really well for people. I want to kind of further solidify something that you touched on, Haley, which is community presence and involvement and investment. So especially for companies who are recruiting from a somewhat local base, but even not sometimes, having a community presence is important. And I think that can come to life in a couple different ways. So some of the things that we do is that we give our employees, of course, we have like service days where we go out and we might go to City Park and do something with a bunch of other groups of employees from other companies who are like, oh, that's cool that your company supports this. We actually have a benefit where anyone on our team can have 2 days to serve the community in any way they want. You get 2 days off. You submit what you want to do, you get it approved, you get 2 days off a year. We have philanthropy budgets. We encourage people to serve on boards. So those are really great ways to invest in the community and kind of have that natural recruitment coming from folks that are doing things like that. And then, professional development is a big piece too. Make your people work for you, right? To recruit talent, putting people in conferences, or like, for instance, I teach a class at Tulane and we're hiring 3 positions right now. And half of our candidates are students from my class. So that's been a really great way for us to, find folks that are like-minded and that are on board with what we do and how we do it, because, you know, they know a little bit more about us than kind of your average person. Excellent. So moving into our last set of questions here, I would love to just hear from you both on what you feel that companies can do to stay, just the key takeaways. What are the things companies need to do to stay really competitive right now in attracting top talent? And Haley, I think you can speak more to the kind of enterprise side, and Alice, I think you can speak more to the small business or startup side.
Yeah, sure. For I will speak more remote side. Yeah, the more remotely. Flexible hours is definitely, and also think outside the box. That you like, for a lot of the founders, they're trying to hire people locally, but sometimes you can start trying to hire remotely. Start with smaller team to see how that works, and then you expand to different time zone, and then later on that you're able to, you know, hire the right people, even though it's not in this, you know, the same location. I think for me, for example, I never met my founders, and I met them through Clubhouse actually. So it's very truly I use virtual connections to meet them, and then to build the connection, and then to work for them. Now almost 2 months later, I will be 1 year working for them. So yeah, I feel
And you
like
still have not met them?
no.
Okay. Wow.
Not yet.
This
Only the
can work,
Taiwan
people.
thing.
This can work. This whole virtual thing can work.
But I got paid, so they're real. Yeah, so yeah, so I would say like think outside the box, and then think about building cross-border teams. It's kind of trending and a new norm nowadays. Also to answer Sarah's question about new norm, I think remotely and cross-border team. Yeah.
Great. Haley, anything to add there?
I mean, you really covered so much of it. And I think we talked about a lot of this, but just, you know, as a company being adaptive and don't, you know, systems are important. And we find a good system, we want to stick with it. But especially in these times, we have to be willing to try different things, you know, take some risk, try, you know, that may be virtual interviews. I know for us, we can't really incorporate virtual work. We can when it comes to corporate things. We have a lot of meetings that way. Being fast. I know I talked about going straight to your audience and just being really aggressive about what your opportunities are and what things you offer. I mean, you kind of mentioned about, you know, getting into the community. That, you know, we try to, you know, really get out there and introduce ourselves to people. Like we do like pancakes with Santa for Christmas, where we like provide, you know, pancakes and all the condiments and stuff. And we bring our McDonald's characters out there and just, you know, have a good time. And a lot of times like people will come up to us while we're there and go, hey, are you hiring? And, you know, it's a 24-hour job, and you can always find, you know, people that are looking for work. So just kind of keeping your eyes open to that.
Absolutely. One of my previous lifetimes, I was a character not at a McDonald's, but at another chain we will not mention. Let's just say I was in a chicken suit on Reed Boulevard for 4 hours in July, which was not the most pleasant experience of my life. Glad I pivoted out of that career. But hey, people notice, right? Okay, great. My final question, and before I get into that, I do want to mention that if I would love to see, you know, I see some questions popping up in the chat. We'll get to those right after this. If you have thoughts to share, things you agree with, things you have a different take on, questions to share, please throw those in the chat, and we will happily address them. What are some things, let's kind of shift to the candidate perspective a little bit, or what you look for in candidates. What are things that are, whether it's skills or soft skills or experiences or mindsets, what are things that have become increasingly more important as you're looking for candidates in this new work world that we're in?
I mean, I would say for me, it's more of a mindset, like you mentioned. I'm hiring a lot of people who this would be their first job. So I'm definitely not worried about their experience or those kind of skills, but it's more, what is their mindset and what is their attitude? And, do I think that they could be a team player, and are they willing to accept some constructive feedback? And are they going to be a people person and friendly with customers? And, so it's more of those kind of maybe leadership characteristics and just overall mindset versus the experience on my end.
So for the people candidates we're seeing, it's more about past experience. What kind of project you involved before, even though it's a school project, how much you involve, not just you're just you like what exactly work that you're doing you did before, something like that. And also, can you culturally adapt it in this company? That is more important. So that's how the retention rate have to maintain. So it's more like okay, the skill set, everyone graduate from top 10 schools, for example, and everyone has good skill set on language coding and such. And then it's more about, can you adapt it into this startup company culture? And each startup company has different cultures, and you're a right fit to this this company culture. It's another important thing as well.
Absolutely. We always say that we don't necessarily hire for cultural fit, we hire for cultural addition. So who can bring something that furthers us to, we're a vision, mission, and values driven organization, which is another topic we could go on about all day, but who's bringing something that really contributes and works towards that. Excellent. So a couple questions in the chat here. Sarah asked, and you touched on this a little bit, Alice, but I want to bring it to the forefront and see if there are any more thoughts here. Based on the lessons that you all have learned about the Great Resignation, are there any new policies or approaches that you hope stick around for the long term?
I wanted to add more that I really like this, new normal flexible hours. It's more like I can do my laundry at the same time, and then I'm talking to you guys, and then I feel so productive after a day after finish this panel, my laundry is done. Yeah, it's more productive for me, and I really enjoyed. And I also like this new norm. It's more like you won't feel like micromanagement. Like you done your job, you are more resolved, and then you finish your things, you meet the KPI, and there's nothing to say more because you already hit the goal. Yeah, so I really like this. Nowadays it's kind of like you said, it's hard to meet your coworkers. Then there's more like virtual networking, where when you're traveling to different countries. For example, I just visit my family back in Taiwan. I also visit our team in Taiwan to do like team bonding and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some interesting tools out there. There's something that I saw recently called Donut, which I think interfaces with Slack, and it kind of connects you. If it's great for bigger companies where people don't really interface on a regular basis or don't necessarily know each other, and it connects kind of two random employees across the company together for like a coffee chat, and it gives them a topic, right? So they have something to start with, they have something to kind of connect over to begin with, and you can just like join a donut and it'll connect you to someone when you have a free moment. But yes, I love doing my laundry during the workday too. It's amazing. It saves me a lot of time on the weekends. Anything else to add, Haley?
I mean, just it's funny how now we can incorporate, we don't do much virtual things within our organization just because of its size. But when it comes to, collaborating with other owner operators or, our corporate partners or suppliers or anything, like I've realized how we can really use, a mixture of in-person meetings and virtual. I don't know how we got so much done in the past, having to, I feel like nowadays we have so many more meetings and so many more, touch points and things because we're able to utilize, Zoom and WebEx and all those things. So I just think being smart about using those things because they can be really beneficial. I know I'm not a fan of all virtual. Sometimes companies, they don't have a choice. That's just what they do. But I think finding a good mix and whenever it's efficient, using that.
Yes, and I think something about us Louisianians is that we love to connect, right? We love to hug, we love to share a meal, we love to toast, and it's hard for us to imagine. It's hard for me to imagine a fully virtual world, but I think there are absolutely tools and ways to make that work. And it is about striking the right balance. I mean, I am so impressed and in awe that Alice has never met her founders. I would have hugged them 3,000 times in a year or 2 years. So I'm really impressed by that. So shifting a little bit from, these benefits that are kind of coming out of the Great Resignation to thinking about like a smaller scale organization. So Lorena has a question around, if your business doesn't have the resources to hire enough people to provide flexible work schedules or different shifts or things like that, you still need people to be, in this case, in the library to work. And maybe we don't have enough people to enact, a group health plan or something that's more traditional. What are some benefits, some creative benefits that are kind of use a limited amount of resources, but are still really effective at attracting and retaining employees?
I would say something that we did that could be beneficial in this situation is to kind of incentivize those employees who are coming into all their scheduled shifts, coming in on time, and doing their work as well as possible. We added like a certain bonus for them, so a certain amount per hour that they'd get in addition to their normal pay if they did a couple of things. So it's helpful because you're not necessarily giving everyone a bonus or raising everyone's pay, but it gives you a chance to maybe make it more individualized and incentivize those ones that maybe, if you need people to come in for your scheduled shifts and not have as many call offs, like that may be something beneficial to maybe add in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Anything you want to add, Alice?
No, I think a lot of times I heard about the bonus too. Yeah, add that. And then
Yeah.
for the remote, I know sometimes when they don't have a budget, they will hire. There are two solutions. One is the hire the manager level person that kind of can oversee. They pay this person more but not like double the salary for the two staff budget, but one staff probably 1.5 staff budget for hiring this person. And then later on, they're able to expand, they have more revenue, then they can hire the second person. And then the other solution is they hire interns first. And of course, the hours is more limit, but trying can do some some stuff that that can help the company help in running and stuff. So that then later on, when they have more revenue or they have more investor coming in, they will hire a full-time for this position. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that both of you all mentioned financial incentives because, we have been in a position before where that was not on the table. We didn't, we had a startup mentality. We were running pretty lean. We're 8 years in now, but I would say the first 5 years, we didn't have money to give people financial incentives or raises or, those kinds of things. And some of the more kind of creative ways that we retained people had to do with tapping into, and it's related to what Haley said earlier around understanding what people's passions are, understanding why they're here and what they want to get out of it. So for the library, for instance, I actually worked with the New Orleans Public Library, and something that really incentivized their staff to stay motivated was giving them ownership over certain programming. So if they wanted to lead, if they loved children and maybe they wanted to go into education one day, giving them ownership over a children's program that runs weekly, or having a little gathering, a book club in the library about sci-fi or whatever it is that person is passionate about. about, giving a project to own and letting them kind of run with it, of course, with the right guardrails in place, but really creating something that they can be proud of, and then recognizing them for it. I mean, recognition goes a long way. We work with the convention center, and because of how they're structured, they're not able to give financial incentives to their staff. They're a partially state-owned agency. And so what that means is they have to be very creative, right? So what they've done is created these innovation labs, and they're a big company to not be able to give financial incentives. So they have these teams of individuals who work on and in the culture on a monthly basis, right? They get together and they say, okay, here are some challenges we're seeing. Let's say it's cross-departmental communication. What are some things we want to test out next month to see if we can make this situation better? Again, giving them something to own and feeling like they have a value to add in a specific area. And then I think the last thing that, has worked well for our team is just spending time together, getting to go out to dinner together, or we did an escape room because we have a client that runs an escape room. It seems silly and it seems kind of like, oh, cheesy team building, but that stuff works. And there's a reason why it's called team building. That's something that we've seen a lot of benefit from. And then the final thing that I wanted to mention is, helping people see their piece of ownership in the impact and the growth of the company. So, we do strategic planning for clients, we do strategic planning for ourselves. And every single person on our small team gets, to spend that day with us doing strategic planning. And they see the financials, and they see the hours that we're spending, and they see the clients that are on budget, and they see the clients that are over budget. And they really get into the inner workings of what's happening to empower them to help us guide the organization in the right direction. And they love it. And it helps us, right? It takes a lot of the brunt off of leadership's shoulders to have to manage all that on our own. So I will shush about things that are almost free to incentivize your employees to stay. And, just want to make sure if there are any other questions or thoughts out there that you can go ahead and throw them in the chat. Other than that, I want to thank so much Alice and Haley for being with us today. They are both on the WorkUp platform, so if you have further specific questions for them, you can always contact them there. And thank you so much for joining us. We hope you had a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.